What's up, my wizards? It's Dev from Mtg. We like magic, especially today, because I get to do one of my favorite kinds of videos. Here are the top 10 cards that I want to see in Rivals of Ixalan. I do a video like this, like every few sets, you know, and it's always fun for me. I get to design cards, which is like one of my favorite things to do. But there is a method to the madness. There's a reason I'm doing this. You know, I'm basically using this as a framework to open up a larger discussion about what we all think Rivals of Ixalan needs to bring it up to par with the other more powerful sets currently available in the standard. You know, Kaladesh and Amonkhet are both really powerful. And so far, Ixalan has not necessarily stood up to them in terms of power level. So this is basically just so you guys can get sort of where I am, you know, a barometer for how I feel about what Rivals needs to do. But it's also a vehicle for you in the comments section to let me know what cards you want to see and how you want to see Wizards expand on these themes so that Ixalan is actually a good block when compared to the other two blocks. So with that in mind, lecture over. Let's actually get into some of the stuff I want to see. Let's talk about the treasure mechanic first here. I really like the treasure mechanic, and I think that it's just a step away from actual standard playability, and a lot of people that have been testing Marionette Master, from other YouTubers to actual players like Conley Woods, you know, actual pro players, have sworn by the Marionette Master deck and how good it is right now, but it just hasn't broken through to the next level of play. But just aside from the Marionette Master deck, I'd like to see Treasure be played more in Standard. So how do we make that happen? Here's a try. Well, this first card is Doomed Miner. It's just 1 red mana for a 1/1 Dwarf Miner. We'll get to that in a second. You can sacrifice it to create a treasure. Simple as that. I actually think this fixes a number of problems somewhat elegantly. You know, first things first, Wizard says that we can't have, you know, turn 1 ramp in Standard. This is turn 1 ramp, but you only get the ramp one time. You know, that helps balance it a little bit. You know, it fixes your mana in the early game. It can create an artifact, important for some decks. Creates a treasure, really important for other decks. It sort of tries to replace Thraben Inspector. That's something else we're trying to do right now. See, the card does an awful lot and is mana neutral. So if you want to build a Storm deck in Standard, or maybe even try to fit it into Modern Storm, I don't think you could. But it is mana neutral, so that's important. So, you know, there's a lot of different directions you could go with this card, but I don't think, at the end of the day, that it's too busted. I didn't want this to have a relevant creature type because I feel like that's worth a little bit of power at the very least. So I wanted to nerf it slightly by giving it a much less relevant creature type. But, you know, I'm also aware that I don't believe that dwarves exist on Ixalan unless I'm just forgetting something really key here. But I don't know that we've seen Ixalan dwarves. So if you want to be a stickler, if you're that guy, or that lady, you know, then this doesn't have to be a dwarf. It could always be a human. But when I think mining, I think dwarves. So I did that. Now, as far as treasure goes, I've got another couple of cards to look at, but one of them is pretty simple. So let's check out Gold Rush right here. It's 4 mana, 3 and a red for sorcery, create 3 treasures. Alright, so I wanted to make sort of a treasure-based explosive vegetation. You know, vegetation gives you 2 lands that you use for the rest of the game. This gives you 3 mana sources that you can use precisely once apiece, you know. Bottom line, actually, I'd just like to see a card that does nothing but make treasure, you know. Pretty much all we've seen at this point is like bodies or effects with make a treasure stapled onto them, and you just increase the casting cost accordingly. I'd like to just see a card that does nothing but make treasure. And honestly, the first card I showed you, the miner back there, that could just be, that doesn't even have to be on a body. Like, putting it on a body kind of makes it better, you know what I mean? You just have a 1 mana red sorcery that creates 1, you know, treasure token. And yeah, again, that's turn 1 ramp. It's mana neutral. All that stuff is true, but you only get the ramp 1 turn, and honestly, I just don't think that would break Standard. Now, the last card I want to show you that I've made that sort of deals with treasure also helps us segue into the tribal themes, so that's helpful. Here's Captain's Barret right here. It's just 1 blue mana for a 1/1 bird pirate with flying, and whenever another pirate you control dies, you get a treasure. Now, this is also sort of pushed, like your opponent's going to want to take care of this before they take care of your other pirates, but that's sort of what Pirates is about, you know, like Siren Storm Tamer jumps in front of other pirates. This is a little bit different. They have to deal with it before they kill other pirates, for the most part, unless they just want to give you free treasure, you know. So this is another stumbling block that forces them to use removal on your smaller guys while you play 2 and 3 and 4 mana dudes, you know. And by the time you get to Hostage Taker, they've exhausted all their removal. I want to see more creatures like that in Pirates, and I think this goes along with that theme pretty well, you know. And it's another treasure card that can create positive mana for you over a game if just 2 or 3 of your pirates die. This would also synergize with other pirates like Captain Lannery Storm, or like the pirates that get +1/+1 for each artifact that you control, those guys. So that would be kind of cool, and it would help you cast your Admiral Beckett Brass a little bit easier, you know, if just one of your pirates dies. Then suddenly you're fixing your mana really easily. I think that this is a pretty pushed 1-mana creature, but at the same time, I don't think it breaks anything. But let me know if I'm entirely wrong about that, because creating positive mana and, you know, demanding removal is pretty good for just 1 mana. Now, I've shown you a few 1-mana cards so far, but I want to show you at least one more today, and that's another pirate, actually, because I want to see another 1-drop pirate, but I'm not sure that the parrot is the one I want to see. I want to see an aggressive pirate drop. That deck needs to get a little bit lower to the ground and have a little bit more finishing power. So with that in mind, here's a card for you. Here's Overzealous Deckhand. It's 1 red mana for a 2/1 human pirate, and whenever it dies, it deals 1 damage to target opponent for each pirate you control. Now, I've designed this card this way for a couple of different reasons. I didn't want to give Ramanap Red a really, really good 1-drop. And you could argue this is. You know, they were playing Falconwrath Gorger, which didn't really do anything besides be a 1-mana 2/1. And that's exactly what we're doing here, but they're not getting much extra value out of it either. In Ramanap Red, you know, unless they have 1 or 2 other deckhands out, which is a consideration. This wouldn't really help them that much, but in Pirates, it's crazy, and I think exactly what the deck needs, especially if you're going to go Grixis with the deck. It would also give the Pirate deck a little reach, which it really, really needs, you know. It's got good tempo, the Pirate deck does. I think that the Pirate deck is positioned relatively well right now, but it just needs a little bit more speed. It has a real tough problem closing games out, and this would help them close gaps, and I'm all for that, but let me know if this is just a little bit too powerful, because I worry. But let's get off of 1-drops and pirates and treasures and such, and talk about what the other tribes in Ixalan need. Starting with the fish people, Merfolk is probably the tribe that needs the most help in this set. Let's face it, they are nowhere near standard playable at this point, at least, so they need an awful lot of help. And I've got at least one idea here. Here's Cumina's Regent. It's 3 mana, 1 a green and a blue for a 2/2 Merfolk soldier with hexproof, and it's an anthem effect. Other Merfolk you control get +1/+1. Now, if there's a tribe in Ixalan that needs an anthem effect, it's probably Merfolk. And I'd say there's at least one more, but we'll talk about that in a second. For now, I think Merfolk's at the top of that list, though. It really needs to make its guys bigger. If it's going to close games or just even have any advantageous combat situations, its creatures need to be bigger than they are. You know, so it needs a lord so bad in standard. And I think this is priced right. You know, if you think this looks a little powerful, it was originally 2 mana, which that would be really, really broken at that point, for just a blue and a green. So I added a mana to it, and I think we're where we need to be. You know, Hexproof is a Merfolk ability to me. I think it needs to be on more Merfolk than just Jade Guardian, which is nowhere near good enough for standard play. If you look at the other 4-drops in standard, Bristling Hydra Hazaret, Jade Guardian's nowhere near it. So I wanted to make a Hexproof Merfolk that's actually good. You know, but I really don't think you're going to be swinging in with this guy too often or anything, unless you're playing against control, you resolve him early, or just, you know, otherwise naked boards. I really don't think he's going to be swinging in much. You're going to let him hang back and safely make your dudes bigger. I think that Merfolk needs a piece like that. Now, fair warning, just letting you know, the next couple of cards I'm going to show you are, I think, easily the most busted cards I'm going to show you all video, and I'm fairly aware of it, but I think that these 2 tribes are just on the cusp of like being really, really, really good in standard, and they need really, really like breakout pieces to make them truly tier 1 playable, and I want them to be, so I gave them busted pieces. So I'm very aware these cards look busted, but I'm not sure how busted they'd actually be. So yeah, disclaimer. Anyway, let me show you the lord for the other tribe that really, really needs an anthem effect. Here's Domas, Ancient Duskwalker. It's 2 mana, white and a black for a 2/1 legendary vampire cleric with lifelink. Vampires you control get +1/+7, and you can pay 2, a white and a black, and tap him to return target vampire from your graveyard to the battlefield, but you can only do that as a sorcery. Okay, so just so you know, I have nerfed this guy a few times since I originally made him. You know, I cut his toughness by 1. He is legendary, so that cuts his playability just a little bit. And he taps now. He didn't used to tap to do that ability when I first made him. So I have nerfed him a little bit, and honestly, I don't think this guy is like too crazy. You know, he's a 2-drop that, if given enough time and space, will take the game over. But I think that Vampires needs another piece like that, especially at 2 mana. You know, at 1 and 2 mana, Vampires just doesn't have enough really high impact stuff. It's got great cards, like Gifted Aetherborn, which this could make a 3/3. But we just, you know, this is another deck that really, really needs an Anthem effect. And by the way, it is also nerfed because it's just +1/+0 and not +1/+1. So I tried to shave some stuff off of this card to make it not so dumb looking. But this is the kind of piece that I do think Vampires needs to be actually playable. Alright, so I've talked about Pirates and Merfolk and Vampires. So I gotta talk about Dinosaurs, and this is, again, I've already mentioned this, but this is probably the other most pushed card I'll show you today. Here is Razor Maw Velociraptor. It's a red and a green for a 3/3 dinosaur with trample, and in Rage, whenever it's dealt damage, it deals a damage to each opponent. Okay, so there are various ways that I have not nerfed this card, that if Wizards were to release a card like it, it could be nerfed, and I would be okay with that. It doesn't need trample. It doesn't even necessarily need the 3rd point of toughness, although that is close to a deal breaker. But if Wizards were to release a card like this and it were just a 3/2, I'd be happy with that too. But I'd really like to see something a little bit more like this, overall exactly this, so that Dinosaurs can, just like these other decks, lower the curve and compete against decks like Ramanap Red, to where it can, you know, trade drops more easily and get early damage in more easily, and also compete against decks like Energy, so it can have faster starts against them, you know. I think that's one of the main problems at the end of it all with Ixalan, is that, you know, the mid-range cards don't compete with mid-range cards from other sets, and the aggro cards don't compete with aggro cards from the other sets. We need to sort of change that, so this is an attempt at a very, very pushed aggro creature that'll get damage in even if it's blocked. Well, I've got like 3 more cards that I want to show you before I wrap everything up here, but the only actual theme or mechanic from Ixalan I haven't addressed is Explore. And if we're going to try to make Explore good, I don't think there are actually that many avenues. Explore is the kind of ability that has been busted in Sealed and Draft. Very good limited ability, but it hasn't made the jump to Standard like at all necessarily. So if we're going to make it Standard playable, here's an idea. And it's pretty simple in its execution, but again, I'm going for that. So here's Adventurous Spirit. It's just 1 green mana for an enchantment, and you can pay 1 and a green to have target creature you control explore. That simple. Now in Limited, this is ridiculous. This is a crazy, crazy sealed bomb and draft bomb, and I'm aware of that. You know, I don't know if this like unbalances the Limited format, but we did make it a rare, so there's that. But if you're trying to build the, you know, the Explore deck, what you really need for cards like Shadowed Caravel and Wild Growth Walker is a source that lets you explore reliably. You know, you need to explore at least once a turn, if not more than that. So a card like this, for a pretty intense mana commitment, would allow you to explore once, twice, maybe even 3 times a turn and get crazy value out of especially Wild Growth Walker, but again also Caravel, and the deck really, really needs a card like that. You know, I've played with the Budget Explore deck for a long time now. I really, really like that deck. I've still got it together. I still play games with it. And if there's one thing it needs, it's a reliable way to explore every turn. So I really would like to see a card like this, although I'm not holding my breath at all. Now we'll get to Angrath in just a second. You know, everybody wants to know, what Angrath is going to be. So I'll give you my speculation in a second, but I wanted to make at least one more like spell. I figure like a lot of creatures in this one, so I wanted to make at least one spell that I would like to see, you know. And one deck that's up and coming is Blue-Black Control or Grixis Control. A lot of people trying to make that work too. So it needs a piece to work, and honestly, I'm not sure this is the piece it needs, but I do want to see this piece, and it's blue-black. So here's what we're doing here. This is Anguished Repudiation. It's X, a blue, and a black for an instant. Counter target spell unless its controller pays X plus 2. You lose X life. So I think that this is balanced. I want to say this is decent design, but that's just me patting myself on the back. You know, for 2 mana, not paying, paying essentially 0 for X. It counters the spell unless they pay 2, which is not terrible for 2 mana. You could do worse, but again, it's not just 2 mana. It's a blue and a black, which is a little bit more difficult. But at the same time, you can pay 3 for it, and essentially it's a mana leak. That drains you 1, but it's scalable. But the more it scales, the worse it gets, which is usually true of these, X counter spells, but this is just really decent towards the beginning and mid game, and really awful in the late game, especially for a control deck that can't afford to lose a bunch of life. So I think that it is somewhat balanced, especially if you're looking for an early game 2-mana counter spell, which I don't know that control needs more of. What control really needs is either a 2-mana hard counter or a 1-mana very soft counter. I could see either one of those being good for control right now. But probably both a little bit busted. So what we've done here is a 2-mana counterspell that is a hard counter in the early and mid game, but scales awfully. So I think that that could work. But we made it to the last card, and I've saved Angrath until the very end here. Here's Angrath, the Cursed Captain. It's 4 mana, 2, a black, and a red for a 4 loyalty legendary planeswalker. If you +2 him, you draw 2 cards, then discard a card, and then you crack your opponent for 2 life. If you -3 him, you exile target creature, and then he deals 3 damage to that creature's controller. And then if you -6 him, his ultimate, which can be done just the turn after he comes into play, is you create a legendary artifact token named Angrath's Chain. With tap, Angrath's Chain deals 5 damage to target opponent. Okay, so this does a few things. First of all, card advantage. You know, card advantage and filtering. Drawing 2 cards is very, very powerful, especially for +2. You know, I've tried to balance it a little bit by making them discard, or by making you discard. But honestly, I'm not sure that that balances it enough. That first ability is probably really, really, really powerful. So I'll admit that, but I did want actual card advantage on a Planeswalker without it being just draw a card. You know, that gets a little boring on Planeswalkers after a while. So we've ginned it up a little bit, but it is still essentially plus card advantage, which is what I wanted at the end of the day. His -3 is my favorite ability on the card, though. I guess his ultimate's my favorite for flavor reasons, but anyway. His -3 essentially in this format makes, I think, the card playable because it essentially reads Exile Target Hazoret or Scarab God, which is insanely relevant, and I would love a Planeswalker that does that and, you know, sticks around and can answer them at least relatively cleanly. So the whole reason that I've you know, have built this card the way I did is so it could be good in this meta, and I think the -3 makes it good in this meta, and you get some reach off of it too. You know, 3 life or 3 damage is actually really, really good. And the whole reason that he keeps, you know, making them lose life or dealing damage is because he's carrying his whip around. But if you get to his ultimate, you get a copy of his whip essentially, and it just taps for 5, you know, for Lava Axe, essentially, you know, which could be great after just a couple of turns you finish the game off, especially considering you know, you've +2'd him at least once, which means you've done 2 damage to him, you know, so you've done 7 damage by the time you crack the whip the first time. So that could be great, a good way to finish the game, and he gets to his ultimate super easy. But they can also just abrade the whip, you know, there's ways they can deal with this. It takes a whole turn to get to the whip, so they can easily remove him. So there, you know, all that applies. But I don't know that this is crazy, but it could be a little too crazy, especially because of that first ability. But I'm tapped out, I think. Those are all the cards I want to see. Let me know down there, not only how you felt about my cards, are they too crazy, are they underpowered? I get that sometimes. I try to go for overpowered. So just know that. Let me know how crazy my cards are, how broken they are, how they destroy the whole game of Magic. Let me know how dumb I am and I can't ever design cards. Let me know all that stuff. Get your, you know, vent your frustrations with me in the comments section. But also, let me know what cards you want to see. Where do you want to see them go with these themes? And if you want to, just write out specific cards that you want to see, just like I did here, down there in the comments section. This is a fun way to get a discussion going. What do you want to see in Rivals? But anyway, that's it for now. Can't wait for this comment section. This is always the best comment section. Because whenever I do one of these videos. Can't wait for it. Get down there and let me know what you think. But anyway, like the video whether or not you liked it. How about that? Yeah. I don't care if you didn't like it. Hit the thumbs up button. Anyway, I work really hard on these videos, especially the ones where I have to go into Magic Set Editor. In case you're wondering, by the way, I always get this question. How am I doing this? Magic Set Editor, free software. Just look it up. Google it. You'll find it. Super free, super fun. So anyway, plug for Magic Set Editor. They didn't pay me at all. I just have a lot of fun with their program. But in any case, like the video if you enjoyed the video. You can also sub if you're new for actual, real, honest-to-God Rivals of Ixalan spoilers, which will probably start in earnest on Monday or the week of Monday. So make sure you're subbed to the channel. Hit the bell for the notes. You can also follow me on Twitter if you want to, SBMTG Dev, or throw me $1 on Patreon to keep the deck techs and videos like this coming at patreon.com/SBMTG. And if you throw me $1 a month, you get to know what videos are coming the day before I put them out. Also, if you wanted to know where you could buy like real, actual Magic cards instead of the fake stuff I've designed here, which I guess you could not buy. I was about to say, like, I could sell these to you. That'd be a fun enterprise, but Wizards would sue my pants off if I'm even wearing pants. You can't tell if I'm wearing pants from this angle. I assure you I'm wearing pants. But anyway, I'm so dumb. If you wanted to buy actual Magic cards, just click the first link in the description. They'll take you over to TCG Player, where you can get sealed product like the new Unstable set, or soon enough here, pre-orders on Rivals of Ixalan at the lowest prices on the internet. I can confidently say that, you guys. Like, real talk, I know some people are like, shilling for TCG Player, but real talk, to be serious here for just a second, I had like 4 other places approach me before before TCG Player did, and I turned them all down because I use TCG Player. I'm not going to, promote a company that I don't use or believe in. But when TCG Player approached me, I was like, yes, I use you, and I know you have the lowest prices. So I accepted their offer. That's simple. I actually do believe that TCG Player is the best place to go, so go there. But anyway, rant over. Sorry about that. Was weird at the end of the video. But anyway, I will catch you cats later. I'm Deb from The Place. Thanks for watching, my wizards. Spread love. Be kind.
I'm a madman, I'm a lunatic, bad man, poison the water in your community. My name is Kefka, and I'll wreck ya. Pause for the break, after which I'll disrespect ya.